All right, hello everyone, and we are back for another Authors Impact Hub podcast, Author Q&A. I am your host, Juanita Woodson, founder of the Authors Impact Hub. So we've been going strong with our community members coming on. If you have not checked out some of the other conversations, make sure you go to YouTube, go to Spotify, and check out what we have going on and listen to those impactful conversations. So tonight we have another community member on with us. We have Miss Denise Walker. So I'm excited. So I actually connected with Denise at a book event, right? And she does some amazing things. I won't tell her story, right? We're gonna let her do that. So Denise, I'm gonna pass the floor to you. If you can let us know where you are from and a little bit about your background.
Hey, thank you for having me. Yes, I live in the state of Georgia, and but I was born and raised in Florida. My background, I am an educator of 25 years. I am an entrepreneur and a minister. So, as an entrepreneur, I am the owner of Armor of Hope Writing and Publishing Services. Been doing that for 8 years, and through Armor of Hope, I service children's book authors and Christian nonfiction authors through editing and book coaching. And through my ministry, Hope in Christ Ministries, I teach on the radio. I teach um, to women, lessons to women, and things like that. And I also create verse mapping resources for people who may want to just grab something that also has a twist of English skills in the verse mapping books. And I also write Christian fiction, women's Christian fiction, and YA books.
Yes. So listen, you've named a lot. So it sounds like you wear a lot of hats, right? So tell us a little bit about your Christian fiction series.
So my Christian fiction series is the Redemption series, and the Redemption series is about Hannah Jefferson. And actually, her story began when I wrote my two YA books as her as a preteen and a teen. But in the Redemption series, Hannah is experiencing some things, but it she goes from being barren, physically barren with endometriosis, but also barren as in emptiness and doesn't know her purpose and all those things. And by the end of the series, she goes from that to fulfilling purpose and coming to walking what God has given her to do with women. So it's kind of like God gets a hold of us, redeems us, transforms us, and then at the end, now he wants us to go and grab some other people. And so that's what the redemption series is all about, where it's her story. It unfolds, and the first book is Barren Womb, where we see her dealing with endometriosis and experiencing not having a relationship with her mom and so many other things that she's experiencing. So that's where that emptiness, physical emptiness and spiritual emptiness comes from. Then in sufficient grace, by the end of barren womb, she comes to know God, and in sufficient grace she experiences his miracle, physical miracle of being able to know that God can do anything but fail with having a child. And then she moves into So That You May Live. By God has walked her through her experience. Now she's opening up. He's given her another charge to go and open up a women's development center, where in the women's development center, she's helping women who are experiencing some of the things she went through. But in there's a twist in the latest story, because now she also has to redeem the relationship between her and her aunt. So that's one of the reasons why it's called the redemption series, because he redeems her, he redeems relationships, and so throughout there's redemption. So
Yes, absolutely. I love that. So, of course, I want to know a little bit more about the background, right? Because as a minister, you said you're in education, but you also write, you edit and you publish, you have a publishing company. So, did you write the books first and then establish your publishing services?
No, I actually, so I publish my works and then I help with coaching, so book coaching where I help people self-publish their works. And so I actually years ago, it was 2016 when I first got the vision for writing. So I started writing, but I had Armor of Hope because I was editing as well. So I started editing actually through a small publishing company. And then I started editing through Fiverr. So I launched Armor of Hope 8 years ago and so in the midst of having Armor of Hope, God began to, and writing at the same time, God began to tell me to put it under, publish it under me.
Okay, awesome. So what made you want to write fiction, right? Because it's so different from writing like a self-help nonfiction. What made you go in that direction?
Actually, the reason why I started writing fiction was my first fiction book, which was a YA, Hannah's Hope, and it was Hannah as a child, but it was really geared a lot to my experience growing up, and so God gave it to me in a fiction format to flip it. A lot of it is fiction, but to take it and make it where characters are there's different characters that are made up and all those things as opposed to self-help you may be using people's names. So I ended up doing that because of that, and plus it was fun because I read a lot of fiction. I love fiction, and so he did a like a spin on it where people wouldn't, because it was sensitive. um People who knew my story and didn't really, there were some issues, then it would be fictionalized. So there wouldn't be, other problems that would arise.
Okay, that definitely makes sense. So what is that process like when you're taking bits and pieces of like your own story and infusing it? So is it an emotional journey?
Oh, absolutely. So Hannah's stories, the books. Yeah, it's been a lot of times where I'm going to push my computer and I've cried, because the meat of it
Yeah.
has to do with, like, even with bearing wound. I dealt with endometriosis before I had a hysterectomy. And so having to go do research on that and also having to, pray about, okay, God, what do you want me to write? And him saying, you're going to help other women. And I'm like, no, I don't want to write about endometriosis. So, but so that was something very sensitive. But it was, it really helped to understand that I had walked through it, and so it was a little easier to write, but there are lots of elements that are fiction. So I had to learn the process of how to write the fiction, start from the beginning and the conflict that goes in between and all of that. So I had to learn about all of that as well.
Okay, but that's different though. I like that. So it challenges you, but it also like opens up your mind to a whole different world to be able to now through your publishing services, do you help other authors who are writing like those fiction books, or do you just stick with like the nonfiction authors that you assist?
I only edit and coach nonfiction because that's the one I really specialize in. But my editor, my fiction editor, I can send people to her. And she, like, if I get people that write fiction, I can give them her information and then she'll connect with them and she can help them with, because there's so many, I want to say, levels to
Yeah.
fiction. Because if you miss the character development, you got to go back and write almost like the whole thing over. If you miss the plot, you got to go back and rewrite. And so there's so many elements: the plot, the characters, the point of view, all of that. And so there has to be somebody who specializes in it.
Yes, absolutely. Because often, and I'm sure you can attest to this as an author, but also as an editor, you'll find yourself reading that same manuscript over and over again. And it's like each time you may find something different, right? So if you
Mhm.
find someone that specializes in it, they can maybe catch those things a little bit sooner. So I love that. Yes, absolutely. So how do you, with all the hats that you wear, how do you balance and navigate all of those things?
Ooh, so the short answer is Jesus. The just the him giving me the grace when my plate is full, and sometimes I have to learn to say no. Like there are other things that may come at me, or sometimes I may get, like, say I have two or three clients that I'm working with for editing and coaching, and somebody else who may be trying to rush something and they want it, like, they give it to me today, they want it next week. I have to explain to them that I can't do it like that. I have to be able to advocate for myself. And I used to, when I first started, I didn't. I would not advocate for myself. I was exhausted
Yeah.
at first. But now God gives me more wisdom to say, no, you can't do that right now. And I have to talk to my clients, and sometimes authors don't. So being able to wear that author hat and also the coach hat at the same time, I understand sometimes authors don't understand that you cannot write your book. So, it can't be ready today and then you want it, tomorrow.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't work like that, because I've had
Right.
to explain that a lot. Um, and helping them understand the process of editing, the process of going to formatting, the process of all of that. That's helped me because now they have more knowledge. And
Yeah.
then my editing clients, the same thing. Sometimes people may get upset, but I told them I love you, but that we can't just take the book and be done in 2 days just because the sometimes they may have timelines that are unreasonable, and me being able to help them understand this timeline. You have 200 pages, you can't finish in 2 weeks, like, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that
Right.
kind of stuff, it has helped me, because I used to wouldn't say anything. I would just say
Yeah.
okay, and then I would be tired and I'd
Right.
be working through the break, and then it's time to go back to work. I'm exhausted.
Right.
So
Yeah. So just learning like boundaries and
mhm,
absolutely. Yeah, and that can, it helps you, it sounds like in business, but then also personally, I'm sure as well, because you like are constantly flipping a different hat on, so you have to have boundaries there. You also mentioned something, and I think it's important as you grow, right? And I think as entrepreneurs, we take on different things, but partnership,
mhm,
you said I have a fiction editor that I can send them to. So it's also like owning, okay, this is someone else's gift. Let me send them so that you're
right,
filling your plate with things. It's just like, okay, now I'm exhausted because I filled my plate with more than what was even supposed to be on there. So I'm glad that you did, mention that
mhm.
partnership is so important when you're growing a business.
Yeah, and I also have my own formatter, because I know how to format,
Mhm.
but when I would get migraines trying to format, I just said, hey, let me take this off my plate. This
Yes.
is not for you. Have not graced me to do this, Lord. So now, because what was happening, I was editing the one client that I started with. I was editing her books and formatting. And then there were times where it would come back over and over. And then that was another thing I had to do, is do what we call contracts, not necessarily contracts, but agreements to say, if this is, if it's changed after this point, there's a
Yeah.
new fee. And so a lot of times people would be like, well, how can you, but you have to understand our time is
Yeah.
valuable. And
Yeah.
so if I have another editing project and I'm over here trying to do this because you've changed it 3 or 4 times,
Right.
that's not fair to this editing project. So yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for going in detail about that and just explaining, the process a little bit because a lot of authors they don't know. We just know I have the book, I want to publish it, and
Mhm.
nobody really explains, the behind the scenes and what that's like. But I think it's important so that you can, get a different viewpoint on it. Absolutely. I love that. So as a book coach and an editor, so what is like the most common piece of advice that you find yourself giving to aspiring authors?
Um, from the coaching hat, I would tell an aspiring author to make sure that they just write the book. Because what I'm finding as a coach, that where I help them pull the whole story together, there's areas where they are fearful of writing. I found that over and over again, and I tell them, um, if God told you to do it, he'll give you the strength to do it. And so you have to just write it. It doesn't have to be perfect, because what happens is they may say, this is, oh well, it's not the way I want it, or it has to be like this. But that's a form of procrastination because they're fearful of releasing it. And so I would say to them, release what God told you to release. Because if you don't, you're being disobedient to him. And so in all of the wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, we're being disobedient instead of writing what he's told us to write.
Listen, you said a whole word there. I love that. Yes, procrastination holds us back so many times, right? And there's so many people that they're waiting for us to put out what God has called us to do. So
Mhm.
not only are you procrastinating and being disobedient, you may be holding up somebody else's breakthrough too. So that's something to think about. So, what steps would you then recommend to someone who's maybe struggling with that fear, right? Because we're human, it's an emotion.
Mhm.
Fear is a real thing. So, how do you maybe overcome that fear?
Well, for me, because I went through that when I first wrote, especially when I wrote Hannah's Hope, which was very sensitive topic, all the, those things. So for me, I had to tell myself, one, I did a lot of praying, asking God to give me the strength, asking him to give me the courage to be able to release it. But also I just had to do it afraid. I just had to do it afraid because you're going to be, every time I write, every time I get ready to release something, I deal with fear all the time, because you're always going to have in your head, well, what if they don't like it? Well, what about this? And
Yeah.
what about this? And what about this? And what about that? And so when you have all that, you have to cease the noise by doing it afraid, because remember, there's an audience just for your books. And if the audience is waiting, there are going to be people that may not read your book because it's not for them. But the audience that's for them, they're not going to be critical. They're going to get what they need from it. But that's why if we hold on to it, because it took me 2 years to write Barren One,
Okay.
2 whole years. And then get people that hold you accountable, because my editor, my fiction editor, she got to the point, she said, listen, she texted me, she said, give me that book, because I kept saying to her, well, wait a minute, it's not ready.
Right.
I need to change it again. And she said, nope, don't touch it. Do not. She said, finish, write the ending and send it to me. And so
Right.
you have to have people that will hold your feet to the fire and say, come on, and release it. And they will walk with you. So she also supports me, and she walks along beside me to say, I'm proud of you. And she will tell me areas where I needed to, tweak things. And well, I've seen you grow. So that person that has the heart for you, that's what I would say too.
Absolutely. And I know your faith, right? Your faith and prayer, all of that, it helps you make sure that you are connected with the right people, like your editor, your formatting person. So, how has on your personal journey, how have you been able to like really intertwine, right, your faith as a writer and as a mentor? And I know you've done that through the Redemption series, but you also minister and you also do the verse mapping, right? So how does all of that, work together for you?
Um, I think it's just because it's what I do as, my life, and just living it, and people seeing, and knowing that, um we don't have to be perfect in front of people, but just being yourself. But also, I've gotten a lot of from people that I've helped encourage them. I've helped them to grow. So sharing, not beating them over the head with my faith, but just sharing, especially on the coaching side where I'll pray with people and I will stop and say, hey, now remember what you told me. You told me God said that you got to get this done. And so we're doing those kind of things without like, beating them over the head with the word and things like that. I think that has helped balance. I love the fact that people know that I'm a Christian editor. They know that I only handle, clean writing and things like that because of, not just being a minister because we're all ministers, but
Right.
and just knowing it all kind of levels out. And then God gave me hope. The name hope is intertwined in everything. So hope in Christ and then armor of hope. And he just gave me that when I started. And then even with the verse mapping group, it's called the Hope Way. And so he has helped just pull it all together and help me help women specifically how and there are a lot of those women are going through something, and so all of it kind of pulls together, even the coaching, a lot of times their story is similar to mine, and a lot of times even with the verse mapping we can be talking through something and suddenly there's somebody going through something, so then bringing that hope to them, it really all kind of comes together.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And I've, behind the scenes, I've been able to like watch your journey, see the things that you're doing, see you going to different events, see you hitting bestseller on Amazon. So all of those amazing things. So how do you stay grounded, right? How do you stay grounded with like all the hats? Education, right? Being a teacher, being in education for as long as you have been. So we commend you for that. We thank you for your service.
Thank
I love
you.
to tell people that. Yes, absolutely. So what keeps you grounded?
I think my husband and just again my faith helping me to and then a lot of times because like I said, there's so many hats, a lot of what I share I do. So like on the weekends I come in here and I sit on the floor for hours. I sit in the word, I may journal, I may just things like that, or I will take time away and my husband will like we'll do something together, me and my son. That kind of stuff helps me to just keep a balance, but also remember, one of the prayers I prayed is God help me never to get to a place where I think I've arrived, but to always remember that you're taking me somewhere,
Yeah.
and that somebody else can see that. So I always say never let me get to a place of pride, a place of any like, and then even if I start that, I start repenting of,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So,
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love this. So what's been like one of the, if you can share, one of the most impactful or memorable parts of your journey as an entrepreneur?
um, I think meeting people, meeting the readers, meeting and connecting with other authors because learning and the learning curve that comes with authorship, because a lot of times we may come into authorship thinking I'm gonna write this book and I'm gonna make X amount of dollars and all the things, and then when you realize it, like, yeah, you got to be a entrepreneur for real
Yes.
because there has to be a different element to, yes, you're gonna one day God's gonna bless you for your books to make, you know, so many, how many thousands, millions of dollars, but you have to have what else can he's giving you to do to make money. So that um I think that's helped me the most. And also meeting other people. The relationships with people have been just priceless.
Yes, absolutely. And I can agree. So meeting the readers, of course, you they tell you how your story connected with them, but then meeting other authors, right, like yourself, just being able to bounce ideas off of each other, learning from each other, right? Because you may have knowledge in something that I'm still learning, right? So when you're open to that type of connection, it can take you so far in your author journey. So I definitely can agree and relate to that. So, is there anything new that you're working on or any new releases that you can share with us?
Well, my latest release is So That You May Live. That's book 3 of the Redemption series. And that one is that one that was a hard one to write. I mean, that was one that I just boo cried and all the things. And there's Hannah's story is ending, basically, closing out her story. Um, where she comes to one more element of forgiveness. But she also, one of the ways God gave me to write it is she is a teacher in the story. And so he gave her the charge to come out of the classroom in the story and open up this women's center. So in her mind, but what you mean just come out? Like and what's gonna happen next, And so it was like a blind faith that she was coming out. He gave her instructions, but her coming out in the blind faith, she had to learn to trust God in that. And there were areas where she wanted to go back where because she was comfortable and then she was a mother, a wife, and all the things. And so that was, her journey in So That You May Live. And then, like I said, the twist of the family member that goes all the way back to her struggle from when she was a kid and something that happened to her as a kid. And so now that family member shows up, she has to forgive this family member in order for her to really walk out the ministry
Yeah.
that she is walking out in the story. And so that one was,
Yeah.
that took me not as long to write, but that was one where when my editor, she was like, when I first wrote the first draft, she was like, we got to do a little bit more here
Okay.
because there
Right.
has to be like lots of, it's called sometimes you write fiction, it's called the hero's journey, but every part there has to be conflict, and then the solving of the conflict. So she was like, no, we got to come back with some more, to add to it. So I learned a little bit more with So That You May Live. And I had to do a lot of research because there was a part of it where you got to go and really research those pieces, because if you don't research it, people who know about it, they're going to read your story and say, that's not right.
Yeah.
And so I had to do a lot of research and in the series in general, because I had to research endometriosis, even though I experienced it, I had to really research it more. I had to research a lot
Okay.
in the series. Hmm.
Okay. Yes, absolutely. I mean, with fiction, so I've never written a fiction book. In the back of my mind, I feel like I have some ideas, and I haven't taken that leap of faith yet. So you were saying some things. I'm like, listen, she's probably talking to me. I need to just text her. But it seems, creative, right? You can be creative with it, but it's also a lot of research. So I love that you're being honest about the journey of being a fiction writer, right? So you write it, but you also have to put the work in behind it too. So
Yeah.
that's why you've been able to create a series from it. So you said her story is ending. So is there any other fiction projects that you are thinking about bringing in the future?
I am. I have several, and that's another thing that I you have to keep like a notebook and stuff. So I have several. I have one that I'm really considering about. It's still gonna be around that hope theme, where it's gonna be about the Hope Girls Club. But I've been doing some like watching people and thinking of ways I can create characters, and I'm considering a character of a young teenage girl. So I'm really thinking about writing another YA where a girl, because I like to write about what kids are really experiencing.
Yes.
Because we I think we live in a world where people want to brush past what's really happening, but somebody has to address it. You know what I'm saying? Not in a strong way or inappropriate way, but what are kids experiencing and how do they overcome it? And so I'm thinking about my brother works in a group home in Orlando, and so I'm thinking about a character who maybe work living in a group home and what that character is experiencing. And also another women's fiction where I want to do where I create my own little city and all of the people live in that city. So I want to do another women's fiction where one of the stories is about a lady who owns a cafe and she wants to do give people hope when they come into the cafe. And so I'm considering writing another fiction about that. So it's a lot of little stories brewing. And then my nonfiction, I am going to, I think it's either in January or February, release another verse mapping book called He is Lord. And I've already written the acronym out. It's already written out. I just got to put the book together. So it's called He is Lord, and it's just the acronym. And as you're studying Christ, there's elements of that you'll study about him.
Yes, absolutely. See, you are busy. I love this. So, we have a lot of amazing things to look forward to and connect with you, right? Because I know that you often you're doing different things in the community, right? I know that in the past you've done different events, so we'll make sure that we have to connect with you for that. So, I always want to make sure we do give you an opportunity to share how can we connect with you on social media, if you have any upcoming events, and then how can we purchase your books?
All right. And so you can connect with me on Facebook at author Denise M. Walker. My ministry page is Hope in Christ with Denise. And my verse mapping page is the Hope Way. So those three. And then on TikTok, I have the Hope Way verse mapping TikTok where it's different strategies that I share about how to study the word, and then I have an author TikTok called Author Denise Walker. So every platform has Author Denise Walker. And then on Instagram, it's the same thing, Author Denise Walker, as well as Hope in Christ with Denise. And I didn't mention jumping back into my podcasting. So that's what Hope in Christ with Denise is. So, um, and also, you can purchase my books at Amazon. You can purchase them if you reach out to me. You can reach out to me at Denise M. Walker at gmail.com. So Denise M. Walker Hope, sorry, at gmail.com. So you can reach out to me there, or you can purchase them. All of them are on Amazon as well, or Barnes and Noble and different places there.
Yes, awesome. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to so I did read and I have it over here somewhere. I have to see what book I read. I need to finish the series, right? So it stopped me in my tracks when I was reading it because of some of the things that she experienced. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is going to be tough," but it's so good. So
Mm.
I want to go back to the YA. So I know that it's for like the younger adults, but I think just to know what she went through as a child will just bring it all together. So I'm giving that small plug, y'all. I've read it myself. Make sure y'all go and grab it and do one up on me. Go and grab the YA versions as well. So I always love to give that opportunity for you to answer this last question. And it's one of my favorite questions, right? I love listening back to these. So, what impact do you want your author brand and your books to leave on the world?
Um, I would say I want my author brand and my books to bring hope to others, and also that people would come to the knowledge of Christ, but not just the knowledge of Christ, but know who they are, and know that they are His identity. They were created in His identity and in His own image, and their identity is Him. And so they would not no longer look at what they've been through and all of what they've gone through in the past, but he can redeem them. He can redeem the time. He can allow them to overcome what they've been through. So I want it to bring them hope, and I always want to deal with topics that real life, because Jesus didn't just pity pat. It was things people really went through in the word. The woman who was at the well, she had what, how many husbands? And so that was a taboo topic, but he addressed it in love. And so I want them to understand that whatever we've gone through, he can do anything but fail. So to bring hope to them, and to know that whatever purpose he put in them, just walk it out. You don't have to worry about what anybody else thinks. Just walk out what he gave you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And listeners, make sure that you go connect with Denise on social media. TikTok, I have to make sure I follow your verse map in TikTok. I love that you are like breaking that down. I think that's so important and necessary. So I will make sure I connect on that end for myself too. But definitely make sure that you connect with her on social media. Go and order her books. If you order through Amazon, Barnes and Noble, make sure you leave a review, right? For authors, that's so important. Please leave a review. And I'm excited, right? There's going to be some other things that we bring Denise on for in the Author's Impact Hub. So I can't wait to share those things for 2025. Just make sure that you do stay connected with us, like, subscribe, share. Make sure you leave us a comment after you listen to this podcast episode. Share some feedback, right? What's one thing that you gained from listening? Until next time, take care.